Hello and welcome everybody. I believe we are populating a little bit slowly today, and that is absolutely okay. Welcome to another GBSN webinar. This one is the Social and Sustainable Finance Research and Training, the role of a business school in building an inclusive and responsible society, sponsored by Montpellier Business School. We have Dr. Anastasia Cozarenco and Dr. Elsa Kassardjian. They will properly pronounce their names in a second. I wanted to remind everyone that the chat function is open to introduce yourselves, as well as please feel free to ask questions throughout the webinar. They will be answered. So without further ado, I am going to pass it off to the speakers.
Hello, everybody. I'm Anastasia Cosarienko, and I'm here with my colleague, Elsa Kassardjian. And we are very happy today to share with you our experience of Montpellier Business School in terms of social and sustainable finance. And let me try and share my screen. Okay, it should be working, I hope. Can you please just confirm that you can see the screen and it works well?
It looks wonderful.
Yeah, thank you very much, Maddie. And thank you for the presentation, Maddie. You pronounced our names perfectly. Okay, so yeah, today we will talk about social and sustainable finance research and teaching at Montpellier Business School. And our presentation will be basically divided in 3 parts. I will talk about Montpellier Business School more generally and about the social and sustainable finance chair at Montpellier Business School in the second part. And then Elsa will talk about the Yunus Centre and its activities at Montpellier Business School. So just a few words about Montpellier Business School. I think the slides will be circulated, so I will not stop that much on all the figures. But just to mention that Montpellier Business School has 3 accreditation, ACSB, AMBA, and the quiz. So it's part of the Triple Crown Business Schools. We have also other rankings at the national and international level. And okay, so we have more than 100 permanent faculty members, of which 60% are international faculty, and from many different countries. I would say around 40 countries or maybe even more. So we have a quite international faculty here. And also what's important, what's specific about Montpellier Business School is our focus on CSR, corporate and social responsibility, both in terms of research and teaching, and also other activities which take place in the school. So, and this is where also it's worth mentioning the chairs. So we have 5 different chairs. And most of them are linked to these topics of CSR. We have also a Yunus Centre for social business and financial inclusion, which will be presented later on by Elsa, and myself. I will present one of these 5 chairs that we have at Montpellier Business School. Maybe it's important to go back to the definition we have of a chair, because I know that according to the countries, it's not exactly the same definition of a chair. So according to the French definition, a chair is a partnership between an academic institution and a private partner. So basically a company. Yeah, just a few words about our partnerships. So we have partnerships in more than 42 different countries, and a few figures. So the last year we've been more than 3,600 students at Montpellier Business School. Many of them work through an apprenticeship contract, meaning that they work both in the company and study at the same time. Oops, sorry. and we have 17,000 alumni. We work with companies. We have, as of today, more than 300 full-time employees, and our budget is around 46 million euros. Anyways, you will have these slides, so I will let you study the figures in more details later on if you're interested in. And I think we can now go to the second part of my presentation, which is focused on the social and sustainable finance chair. So the mission of this chair is to promote this topic of social and sustainable finance through both teaching, research, but also events, networking, partnerships with companies. And we are mainly focused on two main axes. The first one is microfinance and social banks. And the second one is the ESG indicators, environmental, social, and governance indicators, and sustainable investment. These two main axes are led by two professors at Montpellier Business School. So we are two chairholders. Myself, I'm a professor of economics at Montpellier Business School, but my main research focus and teaching focus is microfinance and social finance. And then there is also Thi Hong Van Huang, who is my colleague. She's working on social investments and ESG indicators. So we have also several members within our chair, academic members. So what's interesting here is to see how complementary are different profiles of the academic members. So we have professors who work in finance, more generally in corporate social responsibility, in behavioral finance, ethical finance, governance, sustainable finance, microfinance, also green finance and green accounting. So we have different, we are interested in this topic from many different aspects, sorry. And this is basically network of researchers within Montpellier Business School and also Montpellier University. So this is our local network of researchers working on this topic. Maybe a few words about the history of the chair. When did it start? So it started in 2018 with the creation of the Microfinance in Developed Countries chair. It was my initiative together with the microfinance institution Créasol, which is based in Marseille, south of France, and also the savings bank from Languedoc-Roussillon, which is the region of Montpellier, where Montpellier is situated. So basically, together with these two companies, we figured out, we realized that there was lack of academic research on the topic of microfinance in developed countries. And the idea was really to promote this industry through both academic research and also in terms of teaching. After 2 years, and especially in May 2020, so when we were at the beginning of this COVID crisis, with my colleague Van Huang, we realized that the need for sustainable finance goes well beyond microfinance, and she was working on these ESG indicators and social investment, and we decided to join our forces together and to broaden the topic of the scope of the chair towards from microfinance in developed countries towards social and sustainable finance chair. So this is how the chair was created in October, actually 2020. So yeah, we are almost a little bit more than 6 months old in this format of social and sustainable finance chair. So what are we doing exactly? First of all, let me mention our current partners. So as I told you, the definition of a chair in France consists of a partnership between a private company and an academic institution. So Montpellier Business School is the academic institution, the founder of the chair, and we work today with the Savings Bank in Languedoc-Roussillon, and also with another microfinance institution, which is Microcredit, and they are based in Belgium. There are also academic partners such as European Microfinance Network. Basically, they are based in Brussels, and it's a network of microfinance institutions from Europe, all over the Europe, Western and Eastern Europe. And we work with them because they have very good data, and we can use this data in our research on microfinance. CERMI is the Center for European Research in Microfinance. Again, we have a very good network of researchers there. They are also based in Brussels. And yeah, the idea is to really have this dynamic network of academic researchers who work on these topics. And the chair is also a member of two associations, which are FIR, the Forum for Responsible Investment, and the Actors of Responsible Finance. So maybe just to give you an idea of the outputs of the chair. So we have both, as I mentioned, the mission of the chair is to promote social and sustainable finance through research, teaching, and events. And here we have an example of an event of the conference Agora du Savoir in Montpellier, which was focused on microfinance as a tool for fighting poverty. And there was also an article published in the media after this conference. We have also received Mohamed Yunus, who is the 2006 Peace Nobel Prize. So he came to Montpellier Business School twice to give a conference on social business, and also for the creation of the Yunus Centre for Social Business and Financial Inclusion, which will be later on described by, presented by Elsa. We also promote the social sustainable finance through research, academic research. So for instance, here is a recent paper of mine published in Journal Banking and Finance on the topic of regulation of pro-social lending. Are loans ceilings effective? And beyond academic research in ranked journals, we also, and our partners also value more, let's say, general public publications. So here is an example of the same article, but written in a way so it's not only oriented towards academics. So both aspects for us are important, is to do academic research, but also to value, to disseminate this research. Here are a few examples of activities by my colleague Van Huang. So she, as I mentioned, works on green microfinance, social investments. So here is an example of a paper by her in business strategy and the environment. She also worked on an article on responsible finance as a solution to COVID-19 crisis. And she also interviewed Boris Plantier, who is from the European Financial Management Association. And of course, we present in conferences the results of our research. So in terms of teaching, so I mentioned a few events and a few research outputs. In terms of teaching, we have the following output. So what exists today at Montpellier Business School is two specialization on this topic. So we have in the last year of master, we have a certificate in sustainable finance, which is led by Van Huang. And we also have a specialization, Master of Finance in Responsible Finance. And I'm responsible for this Master of Science, sorry. We also develop case studies on the examples of our private partners on the companies. So we work a lot with them. And also the purpose is to present these case studies to the students so that they they understand how it works, how the social and sustainable finance works in practice. We also are very careful about the innovation. It matters a lot for us, the teaching innovation. So we developed card games on the topic of responsible finance, which is also available in a digital format. So just in case you're interested, I can check with Van if we can share with you these card games so that you can try them. We also this is a project we are working on, an escape game on the topic of social and sustainable finance, which will be also digital. And we are thinking about developing an executive education program on the topics of the chair, which is still in work in progress. Just a few examples of our research projects. So I showed a few publications, but what are we working now on? So we have a project on the impact of microcredit in France, with very good data from INSEE, which is a National Statistic Institute, from enterprises and micro enterprises which were financed by microcredit in France at the national level. We are also looking at the business models of microfinance institutions in Europe using the European microfinance data, European microfinance network data. We are also looking at the discrimination on the credit market, on the ESG portfolio impact measures, the interaction between ESG portfolio management and the UN Sustainable Development Goals, integration of ESG indicators in financial analysis and portfolio management, and the regulatory and big data challenge of ESG. So these are the current projects of the chair. Another example of the activities of the chair is the MBS community in social and sustainable finance. So it's a community on LinkedIn, so on the social network LinkedIn. And it's a community for MBS alumni. So all the people you can see on this slide are MBS alumni who work in the field of social and sustainable microfinance. And what we do is we organize webinars once per month on average, where they have the opportunity to share their working experience, and also it allows them to stay in touch, to exchange information on these topics, but also to propose to the new students at Montpellier Business School job offers and internship offers. Okay, so I think I'm done. I don't know if there are any questions in the chat.
There are not at this time, but everyone is always welcome to put their questions in the chat or in the Q&A function.
Okay, thank you, Mehdi. So maybe I can pass the word to my colleague, Elsa Kassardjian. So I stop sharing my screen.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. I thought I could first share and then put on my camera, but it seems the other way around is more appropriate. So can you guys, sorry, I'm going to do the same check. Can you guys see my screen and my slides?
Yes, it looks perfect.
Thank you so much. So this is basically the first slide. It's similar to the one that Anastasia presented. So it's the same title. And as Anastasia said, I'm going to focus this time on the Yunus Centre and on one specific activity of the Yunus Centre. So in a nutshell, as Anastasia said, we created our Yunus Centre back in October 2019 when basically after Professor Mohamed Yunus came, as Anastasia said, not once, but twice to Montpellier Business School. And I provided, since you're going to get the slides, you will have the link. And here there's a little press release, a little news about his visit at Montpellier Business School and the context in which the Yunus Centre was created. The Yunus Centre was created based on the activities of two specific chairs, the chair that Anastasia just presented, Social and Sustainable Finance Chair, but also another chair, which is called Social Entrepreneurship and Inclusion. And basically, this Yunus Centre has different type of activities. You will find the usual research activities with intellectual contributions that you would expect from any higher education institution, academic articles. I gave you a couple of examples, academic book chapters. Once again, those are just example. Conferences. We have some pedagogical contributions as well. So once again, the link to the Master of Science in Responsible Finance that Anastasia mentioned, and a specialization. As far as dissemination is concerned, we did organize quite a few events with the launch of the new chair, an article in the conversation we were able to put forward the Yunus Centre at Montpellier Business School. We were able to host Professor Robbins for transformational cities. The same picture of Anastasia giving a speech in Montpellier, l'Agora des Savoirs. And if you feel that there's a kind of repetition between the activities of the Yunus Centre and the activity of the chair that Anastasia just presented, it's because there is definitely an overlap. So that's the point I wanted to raise here, which is after 1 year of existence, we thought, okay, well, currently we don't have any projects that are specific to the Yunus Centre. Everything that we promote as the Yunus Centre activity is developed by either one, both chair. So we need to have something specific. And this is the transition to the next project I want to mention within the Yunus Centre, which is a funding program called Social Entrepreneurship for Virtual Environments and Remote Entrepreneurships, also called SEVERE. How did that happen? It happened actually very fast. We were contacted in April 2020 by an institution based in Glasgow, which is Glasgow Caledonian University. And why did they contact us? Because we have this Yunus Centre. GCU, Glasgow Caledonian University, have their own Yunus Centre, and they were looking at partners because they wanted to submit a proposal in competitive grant, an Erasmus Plus, which is a European funding on student mobility, and they were looking for partners within Europe to increase the chances of getting that grant. So they basically had a look at their networks of Yunus centers, found that we had one, and decided to approach us. And they approached us also because Anastasia had some contacts at Glasgow Caledonian University. So in April, they said, hey, would you like to join us in a program that we want to call SEVERE? We said, why not? In August, we received the information that the call had been successful, the project had been selected, and that we needed to start working on it. In a nutshell, SEVERE, it's a 3 years program with an overall budget of 437,000 euros over these 3 years. And the overall aim of this project is to develop transnational program for nurturing entrepreneurial mindsets and skills in order to encourage active citizenship and social entrepreneurship. So in a summary, I would say that basically it's to encourage students to do good for social entrepreneurship work and do it remotely. Because as you will have noticed, because of the current crisis, we need to work differently. And remote working is very important, will become more and more important. So those are the two basic objectives of that program, working on social entrepreneurship and getting to work remotely. This is just a little map of the consortium. We've got 6 institutions, so we've got, most of them are universities, and we're the only business school, really. And we're all based in Europe, of course, because it's a European project. And I basically put in bold the partners who actually do have a Yunus Centre. By doing this, the idea is to emphasize the fact that in order to get funding, European funding, but any kind of funding, connections and networks are really critical. And this is where GBSN, for example, can play, in our opinion, a quite important role, connecting institutions so that it offers a platform to work together. If I want to describe a little bit more precisely the different results, outputs that we can expect for Severe, the first one will be a handbook of remote working for social innovators. So that handbook basically will characterize social needs and challenges within the different cities of the different partners. So each partner has provided some example of social needs and social challenges, and has tried to illustrate that in some little case studies. So a couple of case studies per city. And the second point of the handbook is to review the latest technologies and their applications, so the pro and cons for remote working. So that's basically, once again, that echoes back to the two objectives, social entrepreneurship and remote working. The second result or output of the Severe project is basically a virtual incubation space. And that space is a repository of online tools and networking platforms. This is really where the students will meet to work together on their projects during the course of the Severe project. And basically, it's been designed to help the students take the networking tools in their hands, help them interact, collaborate on their projects, and there will also be a space on that virtual incubation dedicated to mentoring and training. The third result or third output is a training and mentoring program. I'm not going to develop that right now because I want to spend some time on it, given that Montpellier Business School is heavily involved in this. The fourth one is called the virtual micro internship platform. And basically the goal of this one is to increase the availability and visibility of internship opportunities. These opportunities will be mainly in social innovation and social enterprise sector. It will be around virtual or online internship opportunities and micro internships in particular. And the last output expected from Severe is an ebook. This ebook basically will serve as a promotional tool, but also a handbook for other institutions who will want to carry on with this work. As you might imagine, the European Commission is not going to invest in a project that will basically die at the end of the funding. So one of the key points of Severe is to develop basically a blueprint of the program, the tools, the case studies of the projects that our students will have developed together, and everything that any institution basically will be able to take over and implement within their own context. So as mentioned, I'm now going to focus more specifically on the training and mentoring program because Anastasia and myself and a third person, Samuel Nyarko, who happens to be a postdoc in Anastasia's chair, we've been working quite a lot on that training and mentoring program. So I'm just going to give you the key dates and key steps just to explain how this is built. Back in April, we basically presented Severe to our Programme Master Grande École, PGE students, and we got to address about 200 students for an hour, presenting a little bit the project. Then we attracted about 20. Our goal was to have 40, but because we're a business school, we've got less students than our partner institutions that are universities. And we attracted and trained these students for about a couple of hours to present them more with the program. What is social entrepreneurship, what they're going to get out of the program, what we expect from them, etc. The next step now will be to select the 10 students who will be part of Severe. Each institution will get down to 10 students, and these 10 students will get to meet in the summer school that we will organize early September in Montpellier at MBS. And the whole point of this summer school is for the students to get to know each other, to get a fast track training on social entrepreneurship, but also to get to start working together, define the projects they want to work on together. So 6 institutions, 10 students each. It means that there will be about 10 projects, each project composed of 10 students, and these projects need to be defined at the end of the summer school. Of course, after that summer school, every student will go back to their home institution, but they will have to work on the 10 projects. And this is where the virtual incubation space will come handy. This is the platform they will use once they get to know each other in the summer school to keep working together and keep advancing on their projects. Then in March 2022, there will be a winter school where some students will come, not all of them, but at least 1 or 2 students per project will come and report on progress. And that winter school will happen at another partner's location. It happens to be Dublin City University. And in September 2020, we'll have the pitching workshop, which is once again a report progress workshop, and that will happen in Florence. And of course, until the end of the project, students will get to develop their own projects and present at the end in front of communities, of actors of social entrepreneurship, scene, etc. And I just wanted to mention very quickly the type of students we're after, because it's a long project. So we need to make sure that it will basically stay with us during the whole course of the projects. So this is why we ask them to commit for 2 years. They need to be able to speak English, because that will be, of course, the working language. They need to be able to travel in Europe. They need to have at least an interest in social entrepreneurship, but they wouldn't register really if they didn't have that interest to start with. And yeah, they need to be able to engage throughout 2 years and a half in such a project, because it's it's longer than most of the projects we offer our students. But the benefit of it is that they get the opportunity to start from the idea to the incubation phase. So over the course of 2 years, they can do as much as they want, and they can really implement and create, why not, their enterprise, their social enterprise at the end of the project. And I just wanted to finish on a more personal note, just to show a little bit the students that will be part of the Montpellier Business School Severe team, and show that basically this is really what we want to go with. And for me, that picture illustrates, so you see Anastasia, there's also Samuel, the one in the corner at the bottom right. But that picture illustrates the motivation, the enthusiasm of our students, of our youth. And this is really what this project aims to embody. It's really the willingness to do good around and to change things. And this is the reason why we asked them to focus on the Sustainable Development Goal. And that's pretty much everything I personally wanted to cover. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that Anastasia can turn back her. And I realized that I might have spoken a little bit too fast. But if you do have some questions, Anastasia and myself are available.
Well, thank you so much, Elsa and Anastasia. That was great and inspiring, I must say, for the community that GBSN works most closely with globally. And maybe I could start off some of the Q&A, if that's okay. Much of your discussion revolved around microfinance and social enterprise. But I hear often from companies that, large companies, that some of their efforts to become more sustainable, to invest, for example, in more sustainable and nutritious foods, is really the result of our narrow focus on financial capital. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how some of your work fits into the broader set of questions regarding financial capital versus other kinds of capital in this set of questions regarding stakeholder management versus shareholder primacy. If that is also included as part of the scope of your work.
Yeah, I think I can answer that one. So indeed, we are focused more on the finance and how finance can contribute to solve the social problems like poverty, inclusion, financial inclusion from microfinance, but also how enterprises can do better in communicating on their corporate social responsibility and how they can better communicate on their ESG indicators. But we don't really focus on other types of capital in the framework of this chair, but we have colleagues working on nutrition, food, agriculture within MBS, and I think this is covered in more in other chairs which work on organizations and management, responsible management. Elsa, I don't know if you know.
Yes.
How it's addressed.
I can probably develop a little bit. As Anastasia mentioned, we currently have 5 research and teaching chairs. And Anastasia obviously is the chairholder for one. This is the reason why she presented her own chair. But we also have a chair dedicated to inclusive management. It's a chair called Mind. And it's indeed around CSR, HR. So this is the focus of that chair. And we also have another chair dedicated more on sustainable development and more precisely on the narrative around sustainable development. And there's also a narrative around sustainable development in the agricultural sector in particular. But there's not this I would say that currently there is nothing on the finance of the agricultural sector in particular, but we do approach the sustainable development, the sustainability is approached at Montpellier Business School for different foci, if I can say so.
That's interesting. In fact, one sort of follow-up question I was going to ask about, sounds like you've already answered, is that really in a lot of business schools, I'm told that the finance faculty aren't always the leading folks when it comes to sustainability. And it sounds like throughout Montpellier Business School, there's a lot of emphasis across this, and it permeates the culture of the school. But I wonder if I'm thinking about another question. I've read over the years about microfinance and how it's grown, but I've also read about questions regarding its effectiveness. And I was very curious about this effort to look at the impact of microfinance. Some have argued that it hasn't worked as well as we thought it would. And I'm wondering if you could comment a little bit on that, but then tell us a little bit about where you see some of the areas of improvement for microfinance and how we might work as a community towards making it even more effective. I might be jumping too far ahead given your work on the impact of microfinance, but if you could comment on that, that would be great.
Yeah, I agree, Dan. This is a very important question, the impact of microfinance, because maybe some of you are aware about the stories of crisis of microfinance, which took place around the years 2010, for instance, in India and in Bangladesh, in Morocco, in Dominican Republic. So indeed, you can see that it was spread all over the world, this what we call crisis of microfinance. And this period of the industry, it triggered a lot of interest around the impact of microfinance. So is microfinance really helpful, or is it rather damaging the situation of the people or the beneficiaries? And we have, this gave rise to studies which use the technique of randomized control trials, which basically conclude that microfinance has positive impact. Sometimes it's not significant, but it does have positive impact, and mainly in terms of business creation, micro business creation. So in other words, microfinance and microcredit does exactly what it was supposed to do, meaning helping people to create their own business, to get self-employed, in some cases grow their business, make it a little bit larger. But there is no impact indeed on social and let's say on the revenues of the households. Basically, microfinance helps people to substitute their wage job through self-employment. So indeed, being in a wage job, they become self-employed. So in these terms, microfinance does exactly what it's supposed to do, to help people create their own businesses. In the developed countries, the impact is assessed a little bit differently because most of the microfinance institutions are subsidized. And actually, the business models of these MFIs say that it makes sense to subsidize microfinance institutions. Why? Because there is a very developed welfare system. So the states subsidize microfinance institutions, and on the other hand, people create their own micro enterprises, they create their own jobs, so they no longer benefit from the welfare system. And overall, it's positive for the community, for the country and for the community, because micro enterprises can also employ other people, and also they pay taxes to the government and so on and so forth. So the way we assess impact in developed countries, because of the existence of this strong welfare system, is a little bit different. And we have microfinance institutions which assess how much €1 invested in the microfinance in the operating expenses would generate for the community. And for instance, ADI, which is the largest microfinance institution in France, finds that €1 invested in ADI would generate something like €2.3 to the community. So €1 invested would generate €2.3 to the community. And many other institutions in Italy, Belgium, they have done this kind of similar studies, and they found that €1 invested in the operating cost would generate after 2 years something around 2, 3, or 4 euros to the community. So it's worth subsidizing, definitely worth subsidizing, and the impact is seems to be there in terms of cost benefit, analysis. The second question, how it could be improved? Well, I would say through maybe the diversity of the services transfers. So the diversity of the services is very important, in my opinion. Also, going beyond business microfinance, there is also other type of needs beyond the creation of a business, like repairing a house, buying a car to go to work, and so on and so forth. So these personal needs should be acknowledged, and this microcredit to the people, they should also be acknowledged as much as the business microcredit. And maybe the last trend would be to improve the sector would be everything around digitalization, and many microfinance institutions are thinking about how to improve their business models, because the operating costs are very high. The loans are small, so the operating costs are very high. So digitalization and digital tools can help them to decrease their tools. So this is the new trend, I would say, in microfinance.
Elsa, I don't know if we want to add to that, but maybe I could stimulate your addition by going back to something that you talked about, and that was the social enterprise incubation. I'm very curious about that. In fact, my colleague texted me as she was watching this. How do you envision the social entrepreneurship incubation working digitally? You know, we at business schools, we've already discovered how important it is to bring people together in a community to stimulate entrepreneurial development. But this digital incubation seems like a game changer, if you will. And you didn't talk as much about that as you did the mentoring. But I wonder
the mentoring.
Yeah.
There is a reason. The reason is because I'm more involved in the mentoring and training, and another colleague is involved more in the entrepreneurship, the virtual entrepreneurship incubation part. We have at Montpellier Business School an entrepreneurship center and an incubation center, and the head of that center, as well as the chairholder for the entrepreneurship and inclusion chair, will lead that part. But you're absolutely right. It's a game changer. So this is the reason why they're going to work together. There's this platform, a tool already available, and they are going to work together as well with the other institutions to set up some a frame, some tools, some guidelines, some mentors online to make this happen. But this is really a challenge of this project, I suspect, indeed. But when I say challenge, I'm talking about also the opportunity.
Yeah,
So
I agree. In fact, that was one of those things in the same breath. I think you mentioned how GBSN might be helpful in this context. And it seems like with
absolutely.
innovation, if we could tie schools together in the social entrepreneurship dimension, where each brings a set of resources that help the community, seems like a great
But
opportunity.
this is one of the reasons I'm going to put my head of valorization cap, because obviously Anastasia is an expert in her field of research. I'm more an expert, or my role is more into valorization, which encompasses a lot of things. One of the things is indeed around funding and collaboration. And this is the reason why being part of networks such as GBSN, but other ones as well, is critical. One thing I've realized is that today I've talked about this Erasmus Plus severe, but I'm also involved in another Erasmus Plus on online tourism. Tourism is a sector that has been quite, how can I say that? Shattered by the crisis currently. And all the students involved in this type of courses have to find internships, have to validate their years, have to show that they've got this experience. So there's another Erasmus Plus, but I actually see the connection between the two, which is how do you make things happen virtually when we used to meet, when we used to discuss, when we used to be in the same room, or at least to travel and get together. So there are things that need to be developed, and that will be applied to different projects. And both actually Erasmus Plus will have as an objective to provide a blueprint so that other institutions can implement them, can implement and use the tools within their own context. Should anyone from the GBSN be interested in participating, by all means, feel free to contact me, either on existing projects, and we'll see how it's possible to include your point of view, your experience, because we can only gain, the more we talk about it, the more we share our experience, the better the tool will be, obviously. But there's also, and this is the reason why I think that such a presentation, for us at least, is very important. It's, if you are interested in collaborating, if you do have some topics that you think would match Montpellier Business School's interest, strength, then by all means, again, contact me and we'll see if we can work together. And I just wanted to add, I know Anastasia clearly developed and did that really well on the microfinance side, but when you said that generally in business schools, finance might not be the leaders in terms of sustainability, you mentioned that Montpellier Business School was quite involved in sustainability, and indeed, it's part of who we are. We tend to say, and I know it's a phrase that we've said a lot, but it's almost part of our DNA. We do have two strong areas of focus across all disciplines. We have the CSR aspect and we've got the sustainability aspect. And even in our finance department, so obviously Anastasia talked about sustainable finance, but we also have sustainable accounting. We've got a research group on sustainable accounting. We also have people working on energy and cleaner energy and price of clean energy. So, and these people also work. And if you have a look at the chair that Anastasia presented, there are people from other departments as well. So we really try to, around some topics that are quite key to Montpellier Business School, here sustainability, but it can also be CSR, we try to involve cross-disciplinary approaches to make sure that whatever we do is actually as comprehensive as it can be within Montpellier Business School, but we're keen really to expand our network and to include as many people as possible and as many institutions as possible.
Right, that's what we sense from everything that we've learned about the Montpellier Business School, that there's a great deal of interdisciplinary work supported by this strong culture driven by sustainability. Some would argue that sustainability is also a function of inclusion, right? Some mix it together, some separate them, and I want to spend a little bit of time with that. At its core, obviously, things like microfinance are really about inclusion. But I'd like to spend a little bit of time on, for example, gender. And for you to talk a little bit about how you see your work fitting in, not just in generally bringing people into our economy in a meaningful way, but how it fits in terms of bringing in particular women into our economy. I read a disturbing statistic. I don't remember the numbers right now, but in India, for example, female participation in the workforce is declining, actually going down, not going up like we would expect it to see. Obviously they might be more engaged in the informal economy, but that's exactly where microfinance shines. Could you tell us a little bit about your work as it relates to gender inclusiveness in microfinance?
Of course, yeah, that's a very good question, because we have current research on gender. I think I did not mention that on the slides, but we are working with two colleagues here at Montpellier Business School on the question of gender, the percentage of female representativeness in the boards of microfinance institutions. And we are looking whether a higher share of women in the boards of the microfinance institution has an impact on the trade-off between social and financial performance for microfinance institutions. And actually what we find is that the more there are women on microfinance institutions boards, the less microfinance institutions have a trade-off between social and financial performance. So basically having more women on board allows MFIs to better reconcile these two different bottom lines, which is a social bottom line and the financial bottom line. So and also we have other colleagues working on finance who addressed this question of female percentage of female on the boards of firms, companies more generally. So it's a colleague of us, Moez Binori, who also finds that having more women on the boards of companies increases the financial performance of the companies. So indeed, we do have some research on finance and gender. And myself, since I mentioned that I also work on the discrimination on the credit market, so I also have research focused on the clients, the female clients and male clients, but also on the people from European Union and non-European Union, coming from a microfinance institution, an ONG, an NGO in the north of France, which provides personal microcredits. And what we find is that within this microfinance institution, while women who are coming outside Europe, they are more likely to receive a credit from the MFI. And on the other hand, women who are from the European Union, they are less likely to receive a credit from a MFI as compared to a man from the European Union. So indeed, all this result shows that the discrimination question is not that straightforward, that if you look only at the group of women versus men, indeed, we can see some positive discrimination. But if you look within the group of women, European women and non-European women, you can see that some of them are indeed positively discriminated and the other group is negatively discriminated. So yeah, this is what we have in terms of research on gender.
Also, in your work with the severe, for example, is any of that specifically targeting women, or is it more general?
There is no specific target on women, but what's important is that we have diversity among the students. This was definitely one of the main criteria to get students involved in terms of gender, in terms of their origins, in terms of their background, because at Montpellier Business School, students come from the management field, but from other universities that can be students from medicine, from biology.
Design.
Yeah, indeed. So, so we have the main focus of the project is to have diversity,
and that is the diversity within the students. And then the question about what type of projects the students will decide to work on is actually quite open, because we're not going to impose. The whole idea is not to impose any projects, because we strongly believe that the students will need to pick up a project that they strongly feel about, they're passionate about, because to be able to last 2 years and work 2 years with passion on the subject, they might as well pick something they're quite close to. So there might be something around gender. One of the example I personally worked on is around the issue of prostitution, and mainly female prostitution, which has completely changed because of the crisis, because it becomes more difficult, because a lot of people and a lot of women became actually lost their income and don't have a source of income, used to have prostitution as an occasional source of income and had to do that on a more regular basis, for example. So that could be one example of projects that the students might decide to work on or not. But the question of diversity and gender is also addressed. So Anastasia once again gave the example of microfinance and the work of Moez Benouri, but the notion of discrimination towards women or not is actually addressed throughout all the disciplines. And in particular, Walid Nakara, who also is part of the Severe project, he's the one who's going to work on the virtual incubation in particular. And he's working on social entrepreneurship and has a scheme of work around how to help women get back into the employment force. Women, isolated women, solo mother, for example, or women who come out of prison, etc., etc.
Great. I'm going to turn it back to Maddie to close out the session. But before I do that, I just want to say congratulations on all of this work. What a great set of activities. You know, we had a webinar not that long ago where one of the participants said, you know, we're so focused sometimes on this very, very small, less than 1% of entrepreneurship that is all about the sort of market creation, fast growth technology. Right, that we forget that the 99% of entrepreneurship and a really significant part of that is really micro enterprise. And he said something like, you know, if we were to help every micro enterprise in sub-Saharan Africa hire one more person, we would solve unemployment in sub-Saharan Africa. And I really love this one quote from Peter Tufano, who was the dean at Oxford Said. When he was at Harvard Business School, he said, look, at Harvard, we're in the business of producing a few thousand millionaires. We ought to be in the business of producing a few million thousandaires, is what he said. And, you know, your work is just so important, especially as it relates to microfinance. So thank you so much. And I'm going to turn it back over to Maddie to close the session.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, everybody. I too have met Yunus, so this has been very interesting, and thank you for your time. Thank you, everybody who joined today. You will all be receiving a recording and the presentation in a follow-up email today or tomorrow. And just a reminder that our next webinar is Thursday, May 27th. With Africa Business School, how university industry partnerships can support the transformation of organizations, the case of OCP and Africa Business School. Once again, we thank you for joining this webinar, and we hope that you all have a wonderful day. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much. Bye.